The scent of pine and frost filled my lungs as I hurried through the gathering dusk. Winter was settling over the Northern Territories earlier this year, a cruel blanket that promised to smother the weak. Perhaps that's why they were all gathered tonight, to determine who among us would survive the coming cold. I kept my head down as I approached the great hall, my pale blonde hair tucked hastily beneath a simple hood. The choosing ceremony was mandatory for all unmated Omegas, but I'd learned long ago that being noticed was dangerous. 17 seasons had taught me that invisibility was my only shield in a world where my kind was seen as either a prize or a burden. The wooden doors loomed ahead, carved with ancient symbols of pack law and hierarchy. Alpha, Beta, Omega, the eternal triangle that governed our lives since birth. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory as my fingers brushed against the small silver pendant hidden beneath my cloak. "Your heart is not a weakness, Alara," she'd whispered the night before they took her away. "When the world shows you its teeth, show it your soul instead." The pendant was warm against my skin, despite the biting cold. It was the last piece of her I had. A crescent moon cradling a single star, symbols of balance in a world that had forgotten what that meant. "Move aside, Omega," a gruff voice commanded, and I pressed myself against the rough stone wall as a group of betas strode past, their faces tight with anticipation. Tonight, many would rise or fall in status. I alone had nothing to gain. The doors swung open, releasing a wave of heat, firelight, and the suffocating mixture of dominance pheromones that made my knees weak. I slipped in with a group of serving girls, hoping to blend in among their hurried movements. Inside, the great hall had been transformed. Long tables lined the perimeter, laden with winter feast offerings, roasted meats, preserved fruits, and flagons of spiced wine. The center remained empty, a stage for tonight's ceremony. At the far end, elevated above all others, sat the High Council's table. 5 weathered alphas, each representing a territory, occupied ornate chairs of antler and bone. But it was the 6th chair, larger, more intricate, and positioned at the center, that drew every eye in the room. It remained empty, but everyone knew who it belonged to. King Roran, Alpha of Alphas, the man who had united the warring pack 7 years ago through blood and strategy, the sovereign who had never taken a mate despite tradition demanding it. I found a shadowed corner near a pillar carved with hunting scenes and pressed my back against the cool stone. From here, I could observe without being observed, a skill I'd perfected since my parents died in the territory wars. Being orphaned in a society that valued bloodlines had taught me harsh lessons in survival. "Alara," a familiar voice made me jump. Mira appeared at my side, her dark eyes wide with worry. Though a beta, she'd been the closest thing to a friend I'd allowed myself since being taken in by the Eastern Pack as a child of charity. "You're late. The ceremony is about to begin." "Why didn't you wear the dress I left for you?" I glanced down at my simple gray garments. "I'm not here to be chosen, Mira. I'm here because absence would mean punishment." Her expression softened with pity I couldn't bear to see. "The king is selecting potential mates tonight. Every unmated female has a chance." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. A chance at what? Being the broodmare for a man who's executed rivals with his bare hands? Besides, I lowered my voice, we both know no alpha would choose an omega with no pack status, no family connections, and I stopped myself from mentioning my greatest shame. Mira squeezed my arm. "Your condition doesn't make you less worthy." My condition. The illness that had nearly killed me as a child and left me with weakened lungs. The reason I couldn't run as fast, fight as hard, or bear the cold like others. Another mark against me in a society that valued strength above all else. A horn blasted through the hall, silencing all conversation. The crowd parted like water before a blade as a side door opened, and he entered. King Roran moved with the fluid grace of a predator, his broad shoulders and towering height, making even other alphas seem diminished in his presence. His dark hair was pulled back from a face that might have been carved from granite, all sharp angles and unyielding planes. But it was his eyes that held everyone transfixed, amber irises ringed with gold that seemed to burn with their own inner fire. Power radiated from him in waves I could feel across the room. an instinctive pressure that made every Omega present lower their gaze. Every Omega except me, because in that impossible moment, those burning eyes found mine through the crowd, and something like surprise flickered across his otherwise impassive face. I couldn't look away. My heart hammered against my ribs as that golden gaze held me pinned, a butterfly to a board, 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. Then his attention moved on, leaving me gasping as if I'd been held underwater. "Did you see that?" Mira whispered, her fingers digging into my arm. "He looked at you." "He looked at everyone," I muttered, fighting the inexplicable trembling in my limbs. "It means nothing." The ceremony began with ancient rituals, invocations to the moon and forest spirits our people had worshipped long before pack territories were established. I half listened as the high priestess recited the lineage of King Roran's bloodline, tracing it back 12 generations to the first alpha. Then came the presentation of candidates. One by one, daughters of noble families from all 5 territories were led forward. Some proud, some trembling, all dressed in finery that made my simple garments feel like rags. Each woman bowed before the king, offering her neck in the traditional gesture of submission. Some he dismissed with a mere nod. Others he circled slowly, occasionally reaching out to lift a chin or brush fingers against a cheek. Those touched would gasp, either in fear or pleasure. I couldn't tell. The air grew heavy with tension and competing pheromones as 30 eligible females were evaluated like prized breeding stock. "This is barbaric," I whispered to Mira. "It's tradition," she corrected. "The king needs a strong mate who can stand beside him and bear powerful heirs. The packs need stability." I was about to respond when a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. The crowd parted again, this time for a delegation I didn't recognize. Their clothing was different, darker, more practical, adorned with unfamiliar symbols. The whispers spread quickly. "Northlanders. The Frost Wolves. What are they doing here?" A tall man with silver-streaked hair stepped forward, his face bearing scars that spoke of battles survived. Behind him stood a beautiful young woman, with hair as pale as mine, her chin held high despite the hostile murmurs. "King Roran," the scarred man's voice carried across the silent hall. "The Northern Territory brings greeting and seeks recognition under your rule." The king's expression revealed nothing as he studied the newcomers. "The North has maintained independence since the territory wars. Why seek alliance now, Warwick?" "Winter comes early and harsh this year. Our seers predict the longest cold in a century. We would trade allegiance for protection." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Northern Territory was known for its harsh landscape and even harsher people. They were said to be wilder, closer to wolf than human, following older ways and rejecting the hierarchy that governed the United Territories. "And what offering do you bring to demonstrate good faith?" King Roran asked, his tone neutral but his posture alert. Warwick gestured to the pale-haired woman. "My daughter, Linnea, firstborn of my blood and heir to Northern traditions. She would join your court and learn your ways." The king's eyes narrowed. "As hostage or bride, as ambassador," Warwick replied smoothly. "Though if she pleases you in other ways, we would consider it an honor." I felt sick watching the young woman being offered like a trade good, though her expression remained proud. Something about her called to me, perhaps the similar coloring or the way she stood apart as I always had. The council members leaned close to the king, whispering urgent counsel. I could guess their advice. The Northern Territory would be valuable, its fighters legendary, its resources untapped, but could they be trusted? King Roran raised a hand for silence, then spoke. "We will consider your proposal, Warwick of the North. Until then, you and your daughter will be guests of the court." His eyes flicked to his guards. "See them accommodated accordingly." The tension in the room shifted, but didn't dissipate. The choosing ceremony continued, yet it felt hollow now, overshadowed by the political maneuvering I'd just witnessed. "The council won't be happy," Mira murmured. "They want him to choose a mate tonight. Perhaps he finds the selection lacking," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. As the ceremony wound down without a selection being made, people began to disperse toward the feast tables. Mira was called away by her pack leader, leaving me alone again. I seized the opportunity to slip away, needing air that wasn't thick with dominance and politics. I found a small side door that led to an outer courtyard, where winter's first snow had begun to fall in lazy spirals. The cold bit at my cheeks, but the silence was worth the discomfort. I pulled my grandmother's pendant from beneath my clothes and held it up to the faint moonlight filtering through the clouds. "What would you do, grandmother?" I whispered. "In a world where everyone has a place except me? Talking to ghosts? Little Omega?" I whirled around, nearly losing my footing on the slick stones. King Roran stood in the doorway, his massive frame blocking the light from inside. How had he approached so silently? And why was he here? Away from his ceremony and the women eager for his attention. He stepped into the courtyard, and I instinctively backed away until cold stone pressed against my spine. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Raw power contained within a form that made mine seem fragile by comparison. "Your Majesty," I managed, lowering my eyes and cursing my racing heart. "Forgive me. I didn't mean to abandon the ceremony, yet you did." His voice was deep, resonant, with an edge that raised the hair on my arms. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. It was an alpha command, one that my Omega biology was programmed to obey. Reluctantly, I raised my eyes to his. Something shifted in those amber depths when our gazes met. A recognition, a question, or perhaps a challenge. His nostrils flared slightly as he caught my scent, and his eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Impossible," he murmured, more to himself than to me. Before I could ask what he meant, he reached out, one large hand moving toward my face. I flinched back instinctively, a reaction born from years of learning that touch rarely brought comfort. His hand froze in midair, and something like hurt flashed across his features before his expression hardened again. "You fear me." It wasn't a question. "Everyone fears you, Your Majesty," I answered truthfully. "That's how you've kept the peace." A sound escaped him, not quite a laugh, but something darker. "Peace built on fear is no peace at all. Is that what you think of your king, little Omega? That I'm merely a monster who rules through terror?" I should have lied. Should have flattered him as others would. Instead, I held his gaze and said, "I think you're a man who does what necessity demands, regardless of the cost, even to yourself." The snow fell between us, melting as it touched his skin, but gathering on my eyelashes and hair. For a long moment, he simply stared at me, as though seeing something no one else had before. "What is your name?" he finally asked. "Elara. Elara of the Eastern Territory." "No family name?" I swallowed. "None that matters anymore." His eyes flicked to the pendant still clutched in my hand. "And that symbol? What does it mean to you?" I closed my fingers around the silver crescent. "It means that even in darkness, there's always light to be found, if you're brave enough to look for it." Something passed across his face then. A softening, a recognition, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. He stepped closer, and this time I held my ground despite every instinct screaming to retreat. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice low and commanding, "you will attend me in the private council chambers at midday." My heart stuttered. "Me? But why?" "Do not question your king, Elara of the East." His tone brooked no argument. "Tomorrow at midday. Come alone." With that, he turned and strode back toward the great hall, leaving me trembling in the falling snow, wondering what I had done to draw the attention of the most dangerous man in all 5 territories, and what price I would pay for it. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed on my thin mattress in the servants' quarters, replaying the encounter with King Roran in my mind, his eyes haunting me, the way they had changed when he looked at me, from predatory assessment to something I couldn't name. And that word he'd whispered, impossible. What had he seen in me that prompted such a reaction? What could possibly be impossible about an orphaned Omega with no status or power? By morning, dark circles shadowed my eyes, and dread had settled in my stomach like a stone. I moved through my morning chores mechanically, fetching water, helping in the kitchens, trying to ignore the whispers that followed me. That's her. The Omega the king spoke to. What could he possibly want with her? Mira found me near mid-morning, her face tight with concern. "Everyone's talking about it," she said, pulling me into an alcove away from curious ears. "What happened last night?" "Nothing," I insisted. "He saw me leaving and asked my name." She studied me with narrowed eyes. The king doesn't just ask names of random omegas, Ilara, especially not when he's in the middle of choosing a mate. Well, he did. And now he wants me to meet him at midday, and I have no idea why. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Mira's eyes widened. He summoned you? Privately? She grabbed my shoulders. This could be your chance. I shook her off. Chance for what? To be used and discarded? Or worse? To be punished for some offense I don't even understand? Or to rise higher than any omega in history? She countered. To be seen. Valued. I've never wanted to be seen, I reminded her. Being invisible has kept me alive. Her expression softened. Maybe it's time to stop merely surviving and start living. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a small glass vial. Here. It's lavender oil. For calming. Put a drop behind your ears before you go. I accepted the vial with trembling fingers. I'm afraid, Mira. She squeezed my hand. Fear is just the shadow cast by opportunity. Walk toward the light. My grandmother had said something similar once. I wondered if she would approve of the path unfolding before me, or if she would urge me to run as far and as fast as my weak lungs would allow. Midday approached too quickly. I'd bathed in cold water, scrubbing my skin until it was pink. I wore my cleanest dress, a simple blue garment that had once been fine but was now faded from washing. I couldn't bear to leave my grandmother's pendant behind, so I tucked it safely beneath my collar. Its familiar weight against my skin the only comfort I had. The royal wing of the keep was forbidden to most, but the guards had clearly been instructed to expect me. They eyed me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain as they escorted me through corridors adorned with tapestries depicting the unification of the territories. Images of battle and submission, woven in rich threads that contrasted sharply with the violence they portrayed. We stopped before a heavy oak door reinforced with iron bands. One guard knocked twice, then opened it without waiting for a response. "The Omega, Your Majesty," he announced, then gestured for me to enter. Heart in my throat, I stepped into a chamber that was unexpectedly intimate. A fire crackled in a large stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls lined with maps and books. A massive desk occupied one end, covered in scrolls and correspondence sealed with various territorial emblems. At the center stood a round table of polished wood, where King Roran sat studying documents. He didn't look up immediately. "Leave us," he commanded, and the guards withdrew, closing the door with an ominous thud that seemed to seal my fate. Only then did those amber eyes lift to find mine. Today, he wore simpler clothing than the ceremonial garb of the previous night, a black tunic that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, dark breeches and boots. No crown adorned his head, but he needed no symbol of office to command the room. "You came," he stated, as though he'd half expected I might flee. I swallowed hard. "You commanded, Your Majesty." A slight smile touched his lips. "And do you always follow commands so obediently, Ilara of the East?" There was something in his tone, a test perhaps, that made me choose honesty over caution. Only when disobedience seems likely to result in worse consequences. He laughed then, a deep, genuine sound that transformed his face, softening the hard angles and making him appear younger, almost approachable, pragmatic. "I value that in my advisors." "I'm no advisor," I said quickly. "I'm just an Omega," he finished for me. "Yes, so your scent tells me. And yet..." He rose from his chair with fluid grace and circled the table, approaching me with measured steps. "And yet there is something else, something I've never encountered." Each step he took closer sent my pulse racing faster. He moved like the predator he was. All contained power and deadly intent. When only a foot of space remained between us, he stopped, and I caught his scent. Pine and smoke and something wild, uniquely his. My body responded unbidden, a flush of warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with fear. "Your scent," he said softly, leaning closer. "It's different. Changed. As though..." Before I could react, his hand shot out, fingers wrapping around my upper arm in a grip firm enough to hold but gentle enough not to bruise. The contact sent a jolt through me unlike anything I'd experienced. Heat and electricity racing from the point where his skin touched mine. spreading outward until my entire body hummed with it. King Roran inhaled sharply, his eyes widening as they met mine. Whatever he felt it too. Impossible, he whispered again. But this time I understood it wasn't disgust or dismissal, it was wonder. What's happening? I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. He released me abruptly and stepped back, his expression closing off. When did you first present as Omega? The question was so unexpected it took me a moment to find my answer. Late. I was 15. The healers said my childhood illness delayed it. And your heats? How frequent? Heat rushed to my cheeks at such a personal inquiry. Irregular. Mild. Again, because of my health. He turned away suddenly, pacing to the window. Sunlight caught in his dark hair, revealing threads of deep auburn I hadn't noticed before. You've been told you're weak, he stated, his back to me. Because of your lungs. Because your body doesn't conform to what's expected of an Omega. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes, they're wrong. He turned back to me, his gaze intense. You're not weak, Alara. You're rare. I didn't understand. Rare? He gestured to a chair near the fire. Sit. This will take some explanation. Cautiously, I perched on the edge of the seat. He remained standing, as though too restless to be confined. What do you know of the old ways? Before the modern pack structure, I thought of my grandmother's stories. Only fragments, that we were closer to our wolf nature, that the hierarchy was different. He nodded. The terms alpha, beta, omega, they're relatively new constructs, only a few centuries old. Before that, our people had different designations, different gifts. He paused, studying my face. In the old tales, there were those called Luna-blessed. Healers, mediators, seers. They could calm the most aggressive alpha, ease pain with a touch, see paths others couldn't. My fingers instinctively sought my pendant beneath my dress, a crescent moon cradling a star. His eyes followed the movement. Your grandmother, he said quietly. She was one, wasn't she? Shock rendered me momentarily speechless. How could you know that? Because I recognize what you are, what you've inherited. He moved closer, kneeling before me so our eyes were level. A posture no alpha, let alone a king, would normally take before an omega. The illness that nearly killed you as a child wasn't an illness at all. It was your body trying to accommodate power it wasn't ready for. My mind raced, trying to make sense of his words. I don't have any power. I can barely run without my lungs seizing. Physical strength isn't the only kind of power, he said gently. When I touched you just now, what did you feel? Warmth, I admitted, like fire under my skin. For me, it was a calm I haven't known since childhood. A silencing of the constant rage that drives every alpha. His voice dropped lower. Do you understand what that means, Alara? What you could be to someone like me? A chill ran through me despite the fire's warmth. You want to use me, he didn't deny it. I want to understand you. And yes, I want what you can offer. Peace. Balance. His eyes held mine. Do you know how exhausting it is to always be on edge? To feel the beast inside clawing for release with every challenge, every stress? For the first time, I noticed the shadows beneath his eyes, the lines of tension around his mouth. The burden of power had marked him in ways that weren't immediately visible. Why tell me this? I asked. Why not just command me to serve however you wish? You're the king. Because that's not how this works. He rose and moved back to the table, creating distance between us. The gift can't be commanded or coerced. It must be freely given, or it turns to poison. I followed him with my eyes, trying to absorb everything he was saying. And if I don't want to give it? If I just want to live my life in peace? A shadow passed over his face. Then you walk out that door, and I never summon you again. He paused. But I can't guarantee others won't notice what I've noticed. The northern delegation. Their customs are older, closer to the ancient ways. Warwick has already asked about the golden-haired Omega who caught my attention. Fear clutched at my heart. What did you tell him? Nothing. Yet, he leaned against the table, arms crossed. But he'll keep asking, and eventually, he'll discover what you are on his own. So my choices are to serve you, or risk being claimed by strangers. Anger flared hot in my chest. How is that a choice at all? There is a third option. His voice was careful, measured. One that would place you under my protection permanently, beyond the reach of any other claim. I didn't need him to elaborate. You can't mean a mating bond, he confirmed. Not immediately, but eventually, if we find we're compatible. The room seemed to spin around me. You can't mate an Omega with no status. The council would never allow it. I am the king, he said simply. And you are not merely an Omega. You're Luna blessed. I'm nothing, I insisted, rising from my chair, suddenly desperate to escape. A nobody, an orphan. You need a mate who brings political advantage, not what I need, he cut in, is a mate who brings balance. Someone who can stand beside me and temper what I am, not amplify it. His gaze was relentless. Do you think I don't know what the others want? Power through association, status, the chance to influence policy through pillow talk. I backed toward the door, feeling cornered despite the spaciousness of the room. I never asked for any of this. Neither did I, he replied quietly. Neither of us chose what we were born to be. A knock at the door startled us both. Without waiting for permission, it swung open to reveal one of the council members, a gray-haired alpha named Thorn, who had always viewed me with particular contempt when I served in the Great Hall. His eyes widened at the sight of me, nostrils flaring as he scented the air. Something ugly crossed his face before he schooled his features into a mask of deference. Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty, but the Northern delegation is requesting an audience. They're growing impatient. King Roran's posture shifted subtly, power and authority settling around him like a cloak. Tell them I'll be there shortly. Thorn's gaze lingered on me, assessment and calculation in his cold eyes. Perhaps the Omega should be dismissed to her duties. Such private audiences could spark unwelcome speculation. I felt, rather than saw, the king's anger, a sudden pressure in the air that made breathing difficult. The Omega has a name, Counselor Thorn, and her duties are what I say they are. Thorn bowed stiffly. Of course, Your Majesty. His eyes flicked to me once more. I merely think of your reputation. Your concern is noted. The dismissal in the king's tone was unmistakable. Now leave us. When the door closed again, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. He knows. He suspects, King Roran corrected. He doesn't understand what he's sensing, only that you're different. He moved closer, urgency in his manner now. This conversation isn't finished, Alara, but it must be paused. I need your answer. My answer to what? My voice trembled. You haven't actually asked me anything. For a moment, he seemed taken aback. Then, to my astonishment, he laughed, a short, genuine sound. You're right. Direct questions deserve direct answers. His expression sobered. Will you consider what I've proposed? Will you at least explore what you are, what we might be together, before refusing outright? Something in his tone, a vulnerability I wouldn't have believed possible from such a man, made me hesitate. And if I say no, if I choose that third option you mentioned, walking away, then you walk away, he said simply, with my word that no harm will come to you for refusing. I studied his face, searching for deceit and finding none. I need time, to think, to understand what all this means. He nodded. Time I can give you, though not as much as either of us might wish. 3 days. Then I must begin negotiations with the North in earnest, and decisions will need to be made. His eyes held mine. But during those 3 days, you'll need protection. The Council has eyes everywhere, and Warwick's delegation has already taken too much interest in you. Protection how? You'll be moved to quarters in the Royal Wing. Officially, you'll be attending the Northern Princess, Linnea. It will give you access to the library where you can research your heritage, and keep you close enough that I can ensure your safety. My mind reeled with the implications. People will talk. A wry smile touched his lips. People always talk. Let them think you're a servant elevated for political reasons. It's close enough to the truth. Another knock sounded, more insistent this time. Your Majesty, a voice called. The Northerners are growing restless. King Roran's jaw tightened. One moment, he called back, then turned to me. Your answer, Ilara? Will you at least consider my proposal? I thought of my grandmother's words. Show the world your soul. I thought of the pendant against my skin. The crescent moon and star that might mean far more than I'd ever realized. 3 days, I agreed finally. I'll consider everything you've said. But I make no promises beyond that. Relief flashed across his features. That's all I ask, for now. He moved to a side door I hadn't noticed before. This passage will take you directly to the royal quarters. Mina, my most trusted servant, will meet you there and show you to your new rooms. As I stepped toward the hidden door, he caught my hand. The same jolt passed between us. But this time I was prepared for it, observing how his breathing steadied, and the tension in his shoulders eased at the contact. One more thing, he said, his voice low. Whatever you decide, whatever you discover about yourself in the coming days, remember that power unacknowledged is still power. It doesn't cease to exist because you deny it. I gently pulled my hand from his. And remember, Your Majesty, that even a king's will can be refused. Power seized without consent is not power at all. It's merely force. Something like respect kindled in his eyes. Until tomorrow, Ilara of the East. As the hidden door closed behind me, separating me from the most powerful man in the 5 territories, I finally allowed myself to tremble. Not with fear, but with the dawning realization that everything I had believed about myself might be wrong. And if the king was right, I possessed something far more valuable than status or strength. Something that made me not merely useful, but necessary to a man who had never needed anyone. The question that haunted me as I followed the dim passage toward my new life wasn't whether I could endure his touch, but whether he could endure mine. The royal quarters were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My new chamber, though small compared to others in this wing, was still 3 times the size of my former sleeping space. A real bed with soft linens, a copper tub behind a privacy screen, a window overlooking the inner gardens. All luxuries I'd never dared imagine would be mine. Mina, the king's servant, was a stern-faced beta woman with silver-streaked hair and efficient movements. She provided fresh clothing, explained my supposed duties attending Princess Linnea, and left me with a warning that felt more like a threat. His Majesty has never shown such interest in an Omega before. Whatever he sees in you, girl, remember your place. Kings may play with commoners, but they marry for advantage. Her words should have stung, but after my conversation with King Roran, they struck me as profoundly misinformed. Still, I kept my expression neutral and thanked her for her guidance. Left alone, I sank onto the bed, running my fingers over the fine woolen blanket. My mind struggled to process everything that had happened in the past day. Luna blessed. The old ways. A mating bond with a king. It seemed more fantasy than reality. Yet the intensity in Roran's eyes when he'd spoken of what I might be to him had been undeniably genuine. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I opened the door to find Princess Linnea, the northerner with hair as pale as mine, standing in the corridor. Up close, I could see her eyes were a startling shade of violet, another trait we shared, though mine tended more toward lavender. So you're the one they're all whispering about, she said without preamble. Her accent was different, harsher, with rolling consonants that marked her as foreign. The Omega who caught the Wolf King's eye. I bowed my head respectfully. Princess Linnea, I've been assigned to attend you during your stay. A smile curved her lips. Have you now? How convenient. She glanced past me into the chamber. May I enter? These walls have ears, and what I wish to discuss is not for them. Nervously, I stepped aside. She moved with a fluid grace I envied, settling into the room's single chair as though it were a throne. We're kin, you and I, she said abruptly, those violet eyes assessing me. Not by blood, perhaps, but by nature. You feel it, don't you? My heart stuttered. I don't know what you mean. Her laugh was like ice cracking. Of course you do. The moment I entered that hall last night, I sensed you. Like recognizes like, even when we don't understand what we're recognizing. She leaned forward. In the north, we remember the old ways. We haven't forgotten what the Luna Blessed are. I sank onto the edge of the bed, legs suddenly weak. The king said something similar, did he? Her eyebrows rose. Interesting. Most Southerners have forgotten or deliberately erased such knowledge. She studied me intently. But you don't know what you are, do you? You've been raised to believe yourself weak, when in truth you're anything but. What am I then? I asked, unable to keep the desperation from my voice. The king spoke of healers and seers, but I have no such gifts. Linnea's expression softened. The gifts manifest differently in each blessed one. Some heal with touch, others with voice. Some see the future, others see the truth behind lies. She paused. But all share one ability. They can calm the storm within an alpha's soul, balance the primal rage that makes them both powerful and dangerous. And that's why the king... I couldn't finish the thought. Wants you? She nodded. Any alpha would. Especially one as powerful as Roran. The stronger the alpha, the greater the internal struggle. It's why many go mad eventually. The beast inside consumes them. A chill ran through me. Is that what happened to my parents? They were both alphas. Linnea frowned. It's possible. Without proper balance, alpha pairs often destroy each other or those around them. She hesitated. Is that why you fear him? Because of what your parents were? I hadn't realized my fear was so transparent. I fear him because he's the most powerful man in 5 territories, and I'm nobody. Not nobody, she corrected gently. You're Luna blessed in a world that has forgotten your kind's value, that makes you either very precious or very dangerous, depending on who's looking. Like your father? I asked. Remembering Warwick's interest in me, something flashed in her eyes. My father sees you as a potential tool, a way to influence the king. She rose and moved to the window. He sent me here with 2 purposes: to secure an alliance through marriage if possible, and to find any Luna blessed who might strengthen our territory. I absorbed this with growing unease. And which purpose do you serve, princess? She turned back to me, a sad smile on her lips. I serve my people, as I must. But that doesn't mean I share my father's methods. She approached, and to my surprise, knelt before me, taking my hands in hers. I can help you understand what you are, Alara. Teach you to control it, to use it without being used. Her touch was different from Roran's. No electric jolt, no fire under my skin, but a gentle resonance, like plucking 2 strings tuned to the same note. Why would you help me? I whispered. Because I'm tired of seeing my kind treated as commodities. She squeezed my hands. Because I believe the old ways offered balance that the current hierarchy lacks. Her voice dropped lower. And because I've seen what happens when Luna blessed are exploited rather than honored. Before I could question her further, another knock sounded at the door. Linnea rose smoothly and resumed her royal bearing as I answered it. A royal guard stood at attention. His Majesty requests the Omega's presence in the library. Linnea gave me a meaningful look. Remember, cousin, knowledge is power. Seek it before you make any decision. I followed the guard through the winding corridors of the royal wing, acutely aware of the curious glances from other servants and courtiers we passed. News of my elevation had clearly spread quickly. The library was a magnificent chamber, 2 stories tall, with shelves reaching to the ceiling, and narrow ladders providing access to the highest tomes. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. King Roran stood at a massive oak table, covered with ancient-looking scrolls and leather-bound volumes. He'd removed his formal tunic, wearing only a simple linen shirt that revealed the powerful lines of his shoulders and arms. He looked younger somehow, more approachable, until he raised his head, and those amber eyes found mine. Alara, he acknowledged, his deep voice sending an involuntary shiver through me. Come see what I found. I approached cautiously, maintaining a careful distance. You've been researching the Luna Blessed? These texts haven't been consulted in generations, he said. gesturing to the array of materials. Many are in old languages, but I've found translations for some. He indicated a particular scroll. This one describes the first recorded mating between an alpha king and a Luna-blessed woman. It says their union brought a century of peace to warring territories. I studied the faded script, recognizing symbols similar to those on my grandmother's pendant. Is that why you want me? To secure your legacy as a peacemaker? His expression hardened slightly. I want you because when you touch me, the rage that has been my constant companion since childhood recedes. Because in your presence, I can think clearly without the beast inside howling for dominance. He paused, his gaze intense. Is that political enough for you? Heat rushed to my cheeks. Forgive me. I didn't mean... You did, he interrupted, but without anger. And you're right to question. A king's motives are rarely simple. He moved around the table, narrowing the distance between us. But understand this, Alara. I've spent 7 years uniting these territories through blood and fire. I've executed rivals, forced submissions, and made choices that haunt my dreams, all to end centuries of territorial wars that were destroying our kind. The pain in his voice was raw, genuine. And now? Now I seek a different kind of strength, the kind that builds rather than destroys. His hand lifted toward my face but stopped short of touching me. The kind you possess. I steeled myself and closed the distance, allowing his fingers to brush my cheek. The now familiar jolt passed between us, and I watched in fascination as his pupils dilated, then contracted, the tension in his jaw easing visibly. What does it feel like? I asked softly. When I touch you? His voice roughened, like surfacing after being underwater too long, like the first breath of clear air after smoke. His fingers traced the line of my jaw, sending warmth cascading through me. What does it feel like for you? Warmth, I admitted. And something else. A connection I can't explain. A shadow of something, hunger, need, or perhaps simple recognition, crossed his face. That's the beginning of what could be between us. A bond deeper than the conventional mating. I stepped back, breaking the contact. Princess Linnea visited me. She says in the north, they remember the old ways. His expression darkened. Did she now? And what else did the princess share? That my kind are either precious or dangerous, depending on who's looking. I met his gaze steadily. Which am I to you, your majesty? Both, he answered without hesitation. As I am to you. The honesty of his response surprised me. She offered to teach me about my abilities, to help me understand what I am. And you trust her? A stranger from a territory that has opposed unity for 7 years? I thought of the resonance I'd felt when Linnea touched me. I don't know who to trust. My entire understanding of myself has been upended in a day. King Roran's expression softened. Then trust yourself, Alara. Your instincts. What do they tell you? I closed my eyes, listening to the quiet voice within that had kept me alive all these years. That knowledge is power, that I should learn everything I can before making any decision. When I opened my eyes, he was smiling, a genuine expression that transformed his stern features. Then that's what you shall do. Learn from Linnea if you wish, but verify everything she tells you. He gestured to the books. These resources are at your disposal, as am I, when my duties permit. His consideration was unexpected and oddly touching. Thank you. A comfortable silence fell between us, broken only by the distant calls of birds from the gardens outside. For a moment, he wasn't a king, and I wasn't an Omega. We were simply two people seeking understanding in a world that had taught us both to be something other than what we were. The illusion shattered when the library door burst open and Counselor Thorne entered, accompanied by 2 other council members. Their faces registered shock at finding us alone together. Your Majesty, Thorne said stiffly, we've been searching for you. The northern delegation grows increasingly insistent about formalizing an alliance, and I grow increasingly irritated by interruptions. King Roran replied, his voice suddenly cold. The beast he'd spoken of seemed to lurk just beneath the surface, and I instinctively moved closer to him, my fingers brushing his arm. The effect was immediate. His breathing steadied, the dangerous edge in his posture softening slightly. I withdrew my hand quickly, but not before Thorn's sharp eyes noticed the interaction. The council wishes to discuss potential terms for alliance, Thorn continued, his gaze darting between us, including possible marriage arrangements. King Roran's jaw tightened. I've made my position on forced political marriages clear, Counselor. With respect, Your Majesty, you've yet to select a mate despite reaching the age where succession becomes a concern. The Northern Princess offers advantages we cannot ignore. I felt sick at the calculating way they discussed such personal matters, but remained silent, all too aware of my precarious position. The Omega should return to her duties, said one of the other counselors, a heavy-set man whose name I didn't know. These matters are not for servant ears. Before King Roran could respond, I curtsied. Of course. By your leave, Your Majesty. Something like regret flashed in his eyes, but he nodded. We'll continue our discussion of the historical texts tomorrow. As I slipped past the counselors, Thorn caught my arm, his grip just shy of painful. Remember your place, girl, he murmured, low enough that only I could hear. Kings may dally with Omegas, but they mate with their equals. I met his gaze without flinching. And who are the king's equals, Counselor? Those who share his rank, or those who understand his nature? His eyes widened in surprise at my boldness. I pulled free and hurried from the library, heart pounding with a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. In the span of a day, I had gone from invisible to the center of dangerous attention. As I made my way back to my new chambers, I felt the weight of unseen eyes following my progress, the whisper of speculation trailing in my wake. I touched my grandmother's pendant through the fabric of my dress, drawing comfort from its familiar shape. Show the world your soul, she had said. But first, I needed to discover what that soul truly was. The next morning dawned cold and clear, with frost etching delicate patterns across my window. I'd slept fitfully, dreams filled with amber eyes and whispered warnings. The enormity of my situation pressed down on me. A simple Omega suddenly thrust into palace intrigues and ancient mysteries. I dressed in the new clothes provided for me, a simple but well-made dress of deep blue that fit far better than anything I'd worn before. As I fastened my grandmother's pendant around my neck, a knock sounded at my door. Princess Linnea stood outside, wrapped in a fur-lined cloak, her pale hair braided elaborately in a style I didn't recognize. Walk with me in the gardens, she said, extending a gloved hand. We have much to discuss, and the cold keeps prying ears away. I hesitated only briefly before fetching my cloak and joining her. The royal gardens were deserted in the early morning chill, the fountains frozen into crystalline sculptures, dormant flower beds covered with straw for winter protection. You spoke with the king after our meeting, she stated as we followed a winding path. It wasn't a question. Yes. He showed me texts about the Luna Blessed. She nodded. And did these texts explain what happens when one of your kind bonds with an alpha? The directness of her question made me falter. Not in detail. Linnea's violet eyes studied me carefully. There's a reason such bonds were both treasured and feared in the old times. The connection formed goes beyond the physical or even emotional. It binds essence to essence. Meaning what, exactly? She stopped beside a frozen pond, her breath clouding in the cold air. Meaning that while you gain influence over his primal nature, he gains access to your spiritual gifts. Your strengths become his, and his weaknesses become your burden to bear. A chill that had nothing to do with the winter air ran through me. I would take on his rage? His beast, as he calls it? Not exactly. You would balance it, transform it. She traced a pattern in the frost on a stone bench. But such a bond can't be broken once formed. Not without destroying both participants. It's a lifetime commitment in the truest sense. I thought of the electric connection I'd felt at Roran's touch. Had that been the beginning of such a bond? The idea was both terrifying and oddly compelling. In the north, Linnea continued, we still honor the Luna Blessed. They serve as advisors, healers, mediators between packs. Her expression grew troubled, but my father sees them, us, as tools for power. It's why he brought me here. Us? I caught the slip immediately. You're Luna Blessed too. A sad smile touched her lips. Another secret thorn in the council would kill to discover. Yes, though my gifts manifest differently from yours, I see things others cannot, glimpses of possible futures, truths hidden beneath lies. That's why you recognized me, I realized. You saw what I was. She nodded. And I saw the path forming between you and the Wolf King. A path that could change all 5 territories for better or worse. You speak in riddles, princess, because the future itself is a riddle, cousin. She took my hands in hers. But know this. You have a choice before you that few are given. You can embrace what you are and forge a bond that might bring true peace to these lands. Or you can flee and live a half-life, always hiding your nature. My throat tightened. What would you choose? Something like regret flickered in her eyes. I made my choice long ago, when I agreed to serve my father's ambitions to protect others like us in the north. She squeezed my hands. But your path is not mine. You must decide what your heart can bear. As we continued our walk, Linnea taught me exercises to focus what she called my inner light, the source of the calming influence I seemed to have on alphas. Simple breathing techniques and visualizations that made me more aware of the energy flowing through me. Practice these, she instructed. The more conscious control you have, the less likely you are to be overwhelmed by an alpha's emotions during bonding. We were so absorbed in our discussion that we didn't notice the approach of others until it was too late to avoid them. Councillor Thorne and Warwick of the North rounded a hedge, deep in conversation that halted abruptly at the sight of us. Warwick's gaze sharpened with interest as it fell on me. He was a large man, battle-scarred and imposing, with eyes the same unusual violet as his daughter's. So this is the Omega who's caught everyone's attention. I bowed my head respectfully, feeling suddenly exposed. Lord Warwick. He circled me slowly, his nostrils flaring as he caught my scent. Unusual, he murmured. Very unusual indeed. His eyes flicked to Linnea. You sense it too, daughter? She's serving as my attendant, father, Linnea replied smoothly. We were just becoming acquainted. Thorne's cold gaze settled on me. The king seems quite interested in her historical knowledge, though what an orphaned Omega could know of our traditions escapes me. Perhaps she knows more than she reveals, Warwick suggested, his tone making the words sound vaguely threatening. My people value such hidden qualities. Fear coiled in my stomach. It was clear Warwick recognized what I was, even if Thorne did not fully understand. The northern leader's interest was no less dangerous than the king's, perhaps more so. I should return to my duties, I said quietly, avoiding their eyes. With your permission, princess, Linnea nodded, a subtle warning in her gaze cautioning me to remain calm. We'll continue our discussion later. As I moved to pass them, Warwick's hand shot out, fingers wrapping around my wrist. Unlike Roran's touch, his brought no warmth, only a cold, assessing pressure. Your parents? He said abruptly. What were their names? My heart raced. Edmund and Lyra of the Eastern Territory, my lord. Recognition flashed in his eyes. Edmund's daughter. I should have seen it. He released my wrist. Your father was a formidable opponent in the territory wars, one of the few who ever bested me in combat. You fought my father? The revelation stunned me, and respected him, Warwick confirmed. His bloodline was strong, pure. It's interesting that his offspring would present as Omega rather than Alpha. The implication that I was somehow a disappointment to my lineage stung, but I kept my expression neutral. The paths our lives take are not always what others expect, my lord. Something in my response seemed to please him. Well said. Perhaps we'll speak again before negotiations conclude. I curtsied and hurried away, feeling their eyes on my back like physical pressure. When I rounded the corner into the palace, I nearly collided with King Roran, who steadied me with hands on my shoulders. You're trembling, he observed, his brow furrowing. What happened? Warwick, I managed. He knows what I am, and he knew my father. Roran's expression darkened. Come with me. He led me through quiet corridors to a small chamber I hadn't seen before, a private study with comfortable chairs before a crackling fire. When the door closed behind us, he turned to me with concern. Tell me everything. I recounted the encounter in the garden, including Linnea's earlier revelations about bonding. As I spoke, Roran paced, tension evident in every line of his body. Warwick wants to add you to his collection, he said when I finished. anger making his voice rough. He sees Luna Blessed as assets to be controlled, weapons to be wielded. And you don't? I challenged. He stopped pacing, his amber eyes meeting mine directly. I want a partner, Ilara, not a weapon. The sincerity in his voice made my heart flutter. Linnea said a bond between us would be permanent, that I would bear the burden of your rage, your beast, and transform it, he said softly, moving closer. As you already do, with a mere touch. To demonstrate, I cautiously raised my hand to his cheek. The connection sparked between us, and I watched as the tension drained from him, his eyes softening from their predatory sharpness. What happens if I agree? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What would it mean for both of us? His hand covered mine, keeping it pressed to his skin. It would mean standing beside me, not behind me. It would mean having a voice in how these territories are governed. His eyes searched mine. It would mean belonging, Ilara. To me, to a purpose greater than either of us, belonging. The word resonated through me like a bell. All my life, I had been the outsider, the orphan, the weak one. The idea of truly belonging somewhere, to someone, was seductively powerful. And if Warwick tries to claim me instead? The fear I'd been suppressing surfaced. He knew my father. He said things that suggested, "He will not have you," Roran growled, the beast surfacing briefly in his eyes before my touch calmed it again. "I won't allow it. You might not have a choice," I countered. "The council wants an alliance with the North. They're pushing for you to mate with Linnea." His thumb stroked across my knuckles. "The council advises. They do not command. But the political advantages mean nothing if I'm too consumed by my own nature to rule effectively." His voice softened. "Don't you see, Ilara? Everything I've built these past 7 years balances on a knife's edge. The territories obey because they fear me, but fear alone cannot sustain peace." Understanding dawned. "You need me to help you be more than just the beast they fear. I need you to help me be the king they deserve." The vulnerability in his admission was startling. "The king I want to be." The weight of his words settled over me. This wasn't just about my fate, or even his. It was about the future of all 5 territories, thousands of lives that would be affected by my choice. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. The door burst open to reveal a guard, his face pale with urgency. "Your Majesty, there's been an attack at the eastern border. Reports of casualties." Roran transformed before my eyes, the vulnerable man replaced instantly by the warrior king. "Which territory is responsible?" "Unknown, sire, but the reports mention strange markings on the attackers, symbols not seen in generations." A chill premonition ran through me. I reached for my pendant, finding it unnaturally cold against my skin. "Summon the council and the northern delegation," Roran commanded. "I want everyone in the war room immediately." His eyes met mine briefly. "Stay in your chambers, Ilara. Bar the door and let no one enter until I send for you." As he strode from the room, purpose and power in every step, I realized the moment of decision had been forced upon us all sooner than anyone had expected. War was coming. Again. And my path, whatever I chose, would be forged in its fires. I hurried back through the palace corridors, now buzzing with anxiety as news of the attack spread. When I reached my chamber, I found Mira waiting inside, her face tight with worry. "You've heard?" she asked. I nodded, securing the door behind me. "The eastern border. My former home. They're saying it's not a territorial dispute," she said, lowering her voice. "There are whispers of darker forces, ancient enemies returning." The chill I'd felt earlier intensified. "What ancient enemies?" "Those who hunt the Luna Blessed," came a voice from the shadows. I whirled to find Linnea stepping from behind the privacy screen, her face grave. "My father anticipated this," she continued. "It's why we came seeking alliance. The Sentinels have returned, Ilara, and they won't stop until every last Luna Blessed is eliminated." Sentinels? The term was unfamiliar. Fanatics who believe our kind disrupts the natural order, that alphas should rule through strength alone. unchecked by balance or compassion. Her violet eyes held mine. They're the reason the Luna Blessed were hunted to near extinction generations ago. Mira looked between us, confusion clear on her face. What are you talking about? What's a Luna Blessed? There was no time to explain. A new urgency filled me as pieces fell into place. My grandmother's warnings, Roran's protective instincts, Warwick's calculated interest. This wasn't just about politics or personal choice anymore. We need to get to the War Council, I said to Linnea. Your father and the king need to know what we are, what we face. She shook her head. It's too dangerous to reveal ourselves openly. The Sentinels have infiltrators everywhere. Why do you think our kind has hidden for so long? Because hiding has worked so well, I countered. They're attacking anyway. At least united, we stand a chance. Linnea's expression wavered between fear and hope. You truly believe Roran would stand with us? Protect our kind against this threat? I thought of the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd spoken of needing me. Yes, I said with certainty I hadn't known I possessed. And so would any who truly understand what balance means. My grandmother's pendant seemed to warm against my skin, as though affirming my decision. For the first time since learning of my heritage, I felt something like pride in what I was. Then we make our stand, Linnea said, straightening her shoulders. Together. As we prepared to face whatever came next, I realized that the true strength of the Luna Blessed had never been in hiding our light, but in shining it openly, a beacon of hope in dark times. My 3 days of consideration had become 3 hours of crisis. But perhaps this was how true bonds were formed, not in the quiet contemplation of possibilities, but in the crucible of necessity. The War Council chamber hummed with tension when we arrived. Guards initially blocked our entry, but something in my expression, or perhaps the quiet authority Linnea and I now projected, made them hesitate long enough for King Roran to notice us. Let them pass, he commanded, his voice cutting through the heated debate around the massive oak table. All eyes turned to us as we entered. The council members with suspicion, Warwick with calculated interest, and Roran with a mixture of concern and something deeper that made my heart race. Maps were spread across the table, marked with red symbols that indicated attack points along the eastern border. This is no place for servants, Councillor Thorne began. But Roran silenced him with a gesture. Speak, Alara, the king said, intuiting that our presence meant something significant. What do you know of these attacks? I exchanged a glance with Linnea, who nodded slightly. The time for secrets was past. They're hunting the Luna Blessed, I stated, my voice stronger than I expected, and I believe they won't stop at the Eastern Territory. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Thorne's face contorted with disdain. What nonsense is this? The Luna Blessed are myths, stories for children. No, Warwick interrupted, rising from his seat. They are very real, and far more valuable than most here understand. His gaze moved between Linnea and me. As I believe these two can attest. Roran's eyes narrowed. Explain yourself, Warwick. The northern leader circled the table, his predatory grace reminding me of Roran's, though lacking the latter's magnetic pull. The North has always remembered the old ways. We've protected the Luna Blessed among us. Their gifts, their bloodlines. He gestured to Linnea. My daughter is one such treasure. As is your little Omega, though she's only beginning to understand her power. The king's expression darkened. You knew what they were hunting and said nothing until now? I came seeking alliance precisely because of this threat, Warwick countered. The Sentinels have been regaining strength in the shadows for years. We tracked their movements, but lost them at your borders. Sentinels? One of the council members asked. Fanatics, I explained, stepping forward to stand beside Roran. They believe the Luna Blessed disrupt the natural order by tempering alpha aggression. They want a world ruled by strength alone, without compassion or balance. As I spoke, I felt the weight of my grandmother's pendant against my skin. Understanding flooded me. She had been hunted too, had perhaps fled to the Eastern Territory to escape. And you claim to be one of these Luna Blessed? Thorne asked, skepticism heavy in his tone. Instead of answering with words, I reached for Roran's hand. The connection sparked visibly between us. A subtle glow where our skin touched that made several council members gasp. More dramatically, The perpetual tension in Roran's powerful frame melted away, the predatory edge in his eyes softening without diminishing his authority. "This is the true power of the Luna Blessed," I said quietly. "Not dominance, but balance. Not weakness, but harmony." Linnea stepped forward, joining her hand with ours. "In the north, we call them spirit walkers. They bridge the gap between our human reason and wolf instinct. Without them, alphas eventually succumb to the beast within." Understanding dawned on several faces as they observed the change in their king, how he seemed simultaneously more relaxed, yet more focused, more human, yet no less powerful. "These sentinels," Roran said, his voice steady. "What do we know of their numbers, their strategies?" "They move in small, coordinated groups," Warwick replied, apparently accepting that the time for secrets had passed. "They bear ancient marks, a broken crescent moon crossed with a blade. The symbols reported on the attackers," a guard confirmed. "They strike without warning, targeting those they suspect of being Luna Blessed or those who shelter them." Warwick's gaze settled on me. "They have ways of detecting the blessed, rituals, objects that react to their presence." A cold realization washed over me. "The border attacks are a distraction. They're already here, in the palace." Linnea nodded grimly. "They would have sensed us the moment we gathered in one place." As if summoned by our understanding, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside. Shouts, the clash of steel, a scream cut short. Guards drew weapons as the chamber doors burst open to reveal 3 figures in dark clothing, their faces marked with ritual scars forming the symbol Warwick had described. "Sentinels!" Warwick shouted, drawing a blade from his belt. What followed was chaos. The sentinels moved with unnatural speed, as though enhanced by whatever fanaticism drove them. 2 guards fell before anyone could react. Council members scrambled for safety as Roran, Warwick, and the remaining guards formed a protective circle around Linnea and me. "They want the Blessed Ones," Roran growled, the beast rising in his eyes as he positioned himself before me. "Then they shall not have them," Warwick agreed, standing before his daughter. For once, the territorial rivals were united by a common threat. The lead sentinel spoke, his voice a rasping whisper. "The Blessed Ones corrupt the natural order. They must be cleansed for balance to be restored." "You know nothing of true balance," I called out, a surge of conviction replacing my fear. My pendant grew warm against my skin, almost humming with energy. "Your way leads only to endless violence and suffering." The man's eyes, unnaturally pale, almost colorless, fixed on me with hatred. "The wolf was meant to be dominant, not tamed. The alpha spirit must be pure, uncontaminated by your kind's influence." In that moment, understanding flooded through me, not just intellectual knowledge, but bone-deep comprehension of what I was and what I could do. My grandmother's voice seemed to whisper in my memory, "Show the world your soul." I stepped forward, breaking from the protective circle despite Roran's attempt to hold me back. "Ilara, don't," he called, but I moved beyond his reach. "I am Luna Blessed," I declared, standing tall before our attackers, "daughter of Edmund and Lyra, granddaughter of Seraphina of the Northern Crescent. My existence is not a corruption, but a completion. Alpha and Omega, strength and compassion, power and restraint. These are not opposites to be separated, but halves of a whole." As I spoke, the pendant at my throat began to glow with soft silver light. I felt energy flowing through me, power I had never known I possessed. "You fear what you do not understand," I continued, my voice strengthening. "You fear that balance means weakness, when true strength comes only through harmony." The sentinels hesitated, confusion crossing their scarred faces as the light from my pendant grew brighter. Linnea stepped forward to stand beside me, her own inner light manifesting as a subtle violet aura. "Sisters and brothers of the moon," she called, her voice carrying an ancient resonance. "Stand with us now." To everyone's astonishment, several figures stepped forward from around the chamber, a guard whose eyes now shone with inner light, a quiet counselor who had always kept to the shadows, even Mira, who entered the room with an expression of newfound understanding. "The Blessed Ones were never as few as you believed," Linnea told the sentinels. "We have always been here, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the moment to reclaim our purpose. The lead sentinel snarled and lunged forward, blade raised toward me. Before he could reach me, Roran was there, moving with impossible speed to intercept him. They crashed together with the force of colliding storms, alpha power against fanatical hatred. I couldn't bear to see Roran fight alone, consumed by the very rage that would eventually destroy him. Without thinking, I reached out and placed my hand on his shoulder as he grappled with the attacker. The effect was immediate and extraordinary. Rather than weakening him, my touch seemed to channel my energy into him. His movements became more precise, his strength tempered with control. The beast within him worked in harmony with his human intellect rather than against it. Together, truly together, we faced the Sentinel leader. When Roran struck the final blow, it was with regret rather than savage satisfaction, necessary force rather than excessive brutality. The remaining Sentinels, witnessing their leader's fall and the unexpected number of Lunablessed revealed among the court, retreated, only to be captured by guards at the chamber doors. As the immediate danger passed, I found myself suddenly exhausted, my knees buckling. Roran caught me before I could fall, gathering me against his chest with a tenderness that belied his fearsome reputation. "What you did," he murmured, his amber eyes searching mine. "I've never felt such clarity, such wholeness." "That's what we are to each other," I whispered. "Not master and servant, not even alpha and omega, but two halves finding completion." Around us, the chamber had transformed from a war council to something more profound. Lunablessed, who had hidden their nature for generations, now stood revealed, connecting with alphas who had never known the balance they offered. The wall between north and south seemed suddenly more permeable as Warwick regarded the scene with grudging respect. "It seems we have much to learn from each other," he admitted to Roran. "Perhaps an alliance based on mutual understanding rather than political advantage." Thorn and the other counselors watched with expressions ranging from wonder to unease as their worldview shifted before their eyes. Roran helped me to a chair, then addressed the assembled room with newfound authority, not the dominating presence of a feared alpha, but the balanced power of a true leader. "For too long, our kind has been divided, north from south, alpha from omega, strength from compassion. Today we face a choice: continue that division and fall to those who would destroy us, or embrace the balance that makes us whole." His eyes found mine, a question in their amber depths. I nodded slightly, knowing what he intended. "Starting today," he continued, "the Lunablessed will no longer hide their nature. They will be honored for the balance they bring, protected as the treasures they are." He extended his hand to me. "And to cement this new beginning, I choose as my mate not for political advantage or ancient bloodlines, but for the completion she brings to me, and the wisdom she brings to our rule." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the chamber, but I heard them as if from a distance. The world had narrowed to Roran's extended hand and the future it offered, not as a possession or a tool, but as an equal partner in building something new. I rose on still shaky legs and placed my hand in his. "I accept," I said, loud enough for all to hear. "Not as an omega submitting to an alpha, but as Lunablessed joining with her chosen mate to bring balance to both our natures and to our lands." The connection between us flared visibly. Silver light from my pendant, meeting the golden glow that seemed to emanate from him, twining together in the air between us. Several Lunablessed in the room gasped in recognition of an ancient bonding rarely witnessed in modern times. "The true mating," Linnea whispered reverently, "the joining of souls as well as bodies." In that moment, I felt the last of my doubts fall away. The orphaned girl who had spent her life hiding, believing herself weak and unwanted, was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood her own power, not the power to dominate, but the far greater strength to transform and balance. Roran drew me closer, his forehead touching mine in an intimate gesture more powerful than any public display of possession could have been. "My queen," he murmured, for my ears alone. "My heart's completion." "My king," I answered, feeling the truth of it in my soul, my strength's purpose. In the days that followed, word spread throughout the 5 territories of the return of the Lunablessed and the true mating of the Wolf King. The Sentinels' coordinated attacks faltered in the face of united opposition from north and south. The Those who had hidden their blessed nature for generations stepped forward to claim their rightful place as healers, mediators, and advisors. Our formal mating ceremony combined ancient traditions with new beginnings. I wore a crown of silver and moonstone that matched Roran's gold and amber, symbols of the balance we represented together. As night fell, and we stood alone at last on the balcony of what were now our shared chambers, Roran traced the line of my cheek with gentle fingers. "Are you happy, my queen?" he asked. Vulnerability still new enough in him to be precious. I covered his hand with mine, feeling the familiar spark of connection that would never fade. "I found my place in this world," I told him, thinking of how far I'd come from the frightened Omega hiding in the shadows of the choosing ceremony. "Not behind you, not beneath you, but beside you." His smile, so rare before our bonding, now freely given, warmed me more than any fire could, as it was always meant to be. Above us, the moon shone full and bright, casting silver light over the United Territories. My grandmother's pendant lay warm against my skin, its purpose fulfilled. I was no longer invisible, no longer merely enduring. I was seen. I was valued. I was home.